guys, it's Eric here at Farpoint Mowers and More. Today, it's part 2. It's time to reassemble the Honda GVC 190. I've got it all cleaned up. I've taken all of the Permatex gasket sealant and removed it from all the components, and we're ready to put it back together. This is a little more complex than it was taken apart, like everything is. I'm going to move the camera closer in and kind of give you a top-down view of this as we go. And of course, I'll walk you through the important steps as they come up. All right, well, here we are with our engine. We've got it all cleaned up. It's all pretty, it's all been measured. Everything is ready to go back together. Very first thing, now, if this was to be different if we had a separate head, but since this is one piece that is a head, we're going to install our valves and valve springs and valve keepers. To do that, I'm going to install the intake side one first. I've got my pieces here. I'm going to go ahead. I've actually got the spring. There we go. And I'm going to drop that valve into the hole. If I can get it in there properly. Smaller hands definitely helps with this particular part of the job. There we go. And you can see it sticking out now. All right, with one hand holding the valve in place, I'm going to reinstall my valve seal. Then I'm going to lay my spring on top. And I'm going to position my valve keeper over it. Let's see if I line it up. There we go. Can't be in both places at once. There we go. I'm going to push it onto it and then up, and that's it. That one's in place. And then I'll repeat with the other valve here. This is our exhaust valve. Again, I'll probably have to take it off camera so I can wiggle it into place. It's a little hard to see. There we go. Holding it with one hand. This one does not have the seal, so we just put our valve spring and our valve keeper into there and then move it over, and we are good to go. Once those are in place, we're not going to do anything else with the valve train quite yet. We're going to insert our piston into our cylinder. And in order to do that, I've got my piston here with my connecting rod, all this stuff, right? Well, first thing we want to make sure is we've got rings here, 3 rings. The top 2 are compression, the bottom one's our oil scraper. We want to make sure that the gap doesn't line up with any of those 3. So we're going to make sure to position those at varying spots on that cylinder or on that piston to make sure that they're not going to line up. Once we've got that done, we're going to use this. This is called a ring compressor. We're going to loosen it up enough to slide this into place. Once we have that started, we're going to tighten it up as tight as we can to make sure that those rings get good and tight. They've been tightly squeezed, like so, right? Now be careful. This is actually a very sharp edge on both sides, so if this thing gets away from you or if you hit it hard enough, you're going to cut yourself pretty good on that. Once we have that in place, I'm going to take just a little bit of oil. You can use Assembly lube or any kind of lubricant, honestly, helps with this. I've just got some Marble Mister oil. I'm going to splash just a smidge in there. Oh, that was more than a smidge, but that's okay. Get that mixed around in there. Like so. We've got that in there, and that's just to make sure that everything moves pretty freely. All right, so set that aside, and we're ready to try to install this. So I'm going to set it up right. I'm going to slide this in. This is so much easier with 2 people. But I'm going to take that, and I'm going to use my rubber mallet, but I'm actually not using even the rubber portion of it. I'm going to line that up at the hole, and I'm going to tap in. If I can hold everything in place with one person here. And as it starts to go down, my job is to make sure that it still lines up. And that is going to lead you to that. If it binds up, if it acts like it doesn't want to go in properly, stop. You're doing something wrong. It's probably pushed a ring out, and the rings are very easy to damage on this, like very easy. So we want to make sure while we're putting this thing together that we are really cautious about that, okay? All right, it's in though. We're just going to lay this thing flat because the next thing we're going to do, we're going to take this and we're going to push it all the way up in there, and we're going to reinstall our crankshaft. Crankshaft is ready to go back in. Here's my crankshaft. We're going to insert that pointed edge down, and it's a dance. Remember, it's like Tetris. You got to get it in there just right. There's no like right or wrong way to do this. Just got to kind of wiggle it around until she falls into place. And you got to have faith that that's exactly what's going to happen. There it is. Once it's in place, I'm going to kind of pull down on that cylinder. I don't know, sometimes you can actually rotate it. Depends on how tight this thing is. Nah, that's not going to rotate. So while it's in there, we have to insert this piece here. And we're going to install that. And again, you can get this off. You can get this backwards. I think this is how it goes, but we'll know. I think, yeah. We'll know, because if you put it in there and you rotate it and it's wedged in there, well, obviously, got to do that again, right? Okay, so I've got that sitting there, and what I'm going to do is just start the bolts. These have a torque spec, and they're very serious about using those torque specs. But we can get it started enough to rotate this around so that these connecting rods, bolts are in a much more accessible spot, and that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm just going to get them started, and then I'm going to rotate this all the way around to make sure that this is correct. All right, it's working perfectly. So there it is. Now I'm going to face these down, and I got a torque spec for these two bolts. Okay, with our connecting rod bolts in a better spot, I've got a 10 mil hooked up to this. This is a torque wrench, and I've got it set to 8.5 pounds. It's actually 8.7. This tool is not that accurate, but 8.5 is close. Hopefully it'll be close enough. I'm going to start tightening both. I want to do this in a back and forth pattern so we don't get something wedged. There it is. There it is. Perfect. Right, we're good there. Again, I'm going to just make sure that everything still moves freely, and it does. And this is where we're going to start with timing of the engine. If you look real carefully, right there is an arrow stamped into the crankshaft, and right here stamped into the case is a line. Those two have to line up perfectly. That is our crank timing indicator. Once I'm sure those are nice and good, I'm going to install our crank gear into place. There it is. The next thing I'm going to do is install my timing belt. I'm going to slide that up through right here. Get that closer in for you. And that's going to sit right like so. Then I'm going to install my cam gear with my cam lobe. And placement of this doesn't matter quite yet. We're going to try to get it set closely. I've got that pin somewhere around here. Where is that pin? There it is. And we'll slide that back into place. There shouldn't be any pressure on this right now. Go ahead and push that back in. And that's it, right? Now with that in place, I am now going to set my timing. If I can do that by peeling this up onto the belt. All right, so let's take a look at that up close. If I rotate this, you can see one timing mark. If I rotate it the other way, you can see the other timing mark. If those are level with the block, and this pin, it's not. We're one tooth off here. No, we're right. Never mind. All right, if that pin and this arrow and this pin are all lined up, your timing is correct, and we can move on. The next thing I'm going to do is reinstall my rocker. Here are the rocker arms. Those slide in. And in the top dead center position, they should not be under any pressure, so you should be able to slide these pins in. Slide these pins in just right. No problems found, right? Same with the other side. Okay, those are both back into place. Now, we have some measurements we have to take here, but I'm going to wait. I'm going to put the case halves back together first. So I'm going to take this. Now I've got my measurements right. I've got my valves back in place. I've got everything tightened down properly. You're going to need to use something called Permatex or RTV sealant. I have this old stuff. This is FIPG, but it works just fine. Toyota version of this. I worked at the Toyota dealership for about 1,000 years, so I have a bunch of this still laying around because that would only take a quarter of a tube for most projects. You're going to take this and you're going to apply a very thin coat to 1/2 of the surface. You want to make sure you get complete coverage, but you don't want it so thick that it oozes into the engine when you press the two halves together. If you do so, you're going to have big problems because that stuff will get into all kinds of, it'll clog up where the oil needs to be passing through. Could damage the rings. I mean, it's just really, really bad news. That looks very pretty. Okay, put the cap back on that so it doesn't go bad. And we're almost ready to put our case halves back together. This is the part that we don't want to forget or put in backwards. This thrust washer, which keeps all the pressure against one side of this so that this doesn't move up and down, we want that facing up. The bevel faces up. If we face it down, it'll go back together and it'll run, but this little sharp edge will cut the timing belt to shreds and cause the engine to fail very quickly, like surprisingly quickly. All right, making sure that this is also clean, which it is, and that we've reinstalled all the mechanisms here for our governor. We're going to take this unit, we're going to place it upside down, and we're going to slide it back into place. There are dowel pins. We're going to line it up with the dowel pins, and we're going to push down on it until we get a good squeeze, and we are ready to start all of our nuts and bolts that went here, here, and everywhere, right? Again, we can start them by hand in any particular order, but when it comes to final tightening, you want to do it in a crisscross pattern. Okay, once they are all tightened but not tight, we can go back and tighten them down, like I said, in a kind of a crisscross pattern is where you want to do with that. Beautiful. And that's it, my friend. She is now back together. The rest of this is all easy work, if you ask me. Okay, next up, we're going to adjust these, and I'm going to reposition the camera so you get a better view of what I have to do here. Okay, so we're at the point where we need to adjust our valves. In order to do this properly, we have to make sure our cam lobe is at top dead center. It is. So we should have play on both sides here. We have this, it's called a feeler gauge. We are looking for 0.006. So there it is right there. The idea behind this is called valve lash. These are rocker arms, and this is what we're doing here is called valve lash adjustments. I'm going to stick that in there, and I should feel some resistance. If I had to force it in, or if when I put it in and don't even feel the two halves, then it's not good. This side is too tight. You can feel I had to force that in, right? It doesn't want to go in. To adjust it, this is a 9mm. We're going to undo that just slightly. Then, using a needle nose plier, I am going to stick the 6mm in there, and I'm going to use the top here, and I'm going to adjust it just ever so slightly. Oh, I like that a lot better. I'm going to hold that in place, and I'm going to snug that back down. These do not have to be very tight either, just a little bit. They're very fine pitch, so that can cause issues. If you push too hard, you'll definitely ruin it. Now it feels just like the other one. You can even feel they click about the same. That is valve lash adjustments. It is very important that you do that, or you're going to have a non-running engine. If it's too tight, the valve is slightly pushed down when it's supposed to be all the way closed. The engine fails to build compression. Too far open, first of all, you're going to get a lot of noise in the engine, clatter, but then more importantly, what you're going to have is a valve that doesn't open fully, and therefore it does not run efficiently or at all, honestly, sometimes. Okay, so with that out of the way, we're ready to put our valve cover back on. Same thing, I've got it all cleaned up here. I'm going to put a layer of that Permatex RTB type sealant on there, silicone sealer on that. I find these valve covers to be a lot harder to get the old sealant off because they have a groove in there to hold them from getting too nasty. I guess they want that oil to leak out of those valve covers, so they gum them up pretty good. Okay, and that's that. So now I'm going to reinstall that. This is interesting. See this piece right here that sticks down? Well, it's because this pin for your valve cover is supposed to line up with that. See how that? Now my cam pin there that's holding that camshaft in place, it can't come out. Oh, my hands are really dirty with goo. All right, hold on. But we got this on, so I'm going to go ahead and tighten it up. I got my 4 10mm bolts. Again, I recommend doing this in kind of a crisscross pattern after you get it started. And get all of them started first. Awesome. Okay. Now, I'm done with my sealant, so I'm going to clean that cap off and put that away until the next time I need that. And then I'll wipe some of this stuff I got all over with my dirty fingers. Good time to change gloves, it looks like. All right, we'll just wipe all that down so the customer doesn't question if we're sloppy mechanics or not, right? We don't want that. All right, got that in. We're ready to start reassembling the ignition system and then the fuel system. But first, just to get it done and out of the way, I'm going to reinstall my PCB valve here. That just sits in there. Make sure that little red piece is there. And slide that into place. Just because there's some stuff that kind of gets blocked, makes it a little harder to get this in place once we do our flywheel and our emergency cutoff stuff. So I'm going to put that in there, get it started, and then tighten it down. All right, next up, I'm going to install this. This is the braking and ignition cutoff here for our setup. One bolt is slightly longer. That longer bolt goes here. Awesome. Time to put our flywheel back on. Make sure that your key hasn't disappeared. You can see it's not a perfect circle. That has a little spot right there. You got to line that up with your key. Also, you'll have to pull back on the spring in order to set this thing down because it wants to hit that brake. And there we are. Once we're sure we've got it lined up right, go ahead and put our bolt back into place. And again, this is the only time you're going to tighten anything with the impact gun or electric impact. And there we go. And we are ready to move on to our ignition system. This is a bit of a trick. This one's a bit tricky. Ignition system sits here. The coil faces up. We have our wire. We can go ahead and plug that in just so we don't forget. One side has a deeper hole. That side is going to be using, it has double duty. I'm going to rotate that slightly. There we go. One side is double duty. It also holds our cover, our pull start cover, and our air shroud cover on. All right, get that one started. We'll get this one started. This also has a depth that we have to measure. And so I'm going to show you the cheater way of doing it that has worked for me every single time I have tried it. Hopefully it will do the same for you. Okay, so when it comes to this, I've got these bolts started but not tightened. You can't have it touching. Remember when I was talking about how it has to be sitting off? Well, there's a lot of complicated ways you can go about doing it. But what I have found is that this is the perfect thickness. You're going to slide a zip tie in there between those two pieces, and that will give you exactly the distance you need in order to make this thing just right. I'll show you what I mean. Perfecto, right? Now when I rotate this, it is not coming into contact. It has just the right amount of gap. Back in the old days, we used to use cigarette match packs, just a pack of matches. We used to use the cardboard tops on those. But over the years, it's, well, no one smokes anymore, which is a good thing. So now we use paper folded up, a piece of cardboard, or in my case, I used a zip tie. I'm not going to put my spark plug in yet. I'm going to hold off on that. While I have that 9mm still attached to my socket, I'm going to go ahead and install the other two long ones here and get that out of the way. And then we're going to install our muffler and the heat shield for it. Here's where the muffler lives. We're going to install that like so. And it's got some long bolts. Just make sure to remember which bolts they're used for each of these jobs. Awesome, right? Then we have our heat shield that takes 3 small bolts. And that is these here. That's it for the exhaust side. That's it for the ignition side. And now we move on to the hardest part of this, I believe. Carburetor, our intake system, and the governor system that all kind of melds together there. I'm going to lay all that stuff here. I'm going to make sure we have a decent camera angle for you. And we're going to get going on that party. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to reinstall this, which is our governor linkage. So I'm just going to slide that into place, and I'm going to tighten that bolt there down a bit. Perfect. Okay. Then I got my carburetor. which has these two linkages here. I'm going to not install that yet. And the next thing I'm going to install here, I want you to remember, you got a gasket here, right? This goes on there, like so. Oops. like so, if I can get it on there. There we go. Like so. That sits on there like that. Right? Then we have this. Then we have the carburetor. Then we have another gasket. And then we have our air filter box. And they're all going to go in there. And then we have these lines to hold it all in place. For right now, I can step the stuff up, but honestly, I can't do this from the side. So that is how it's done. Let me pause the camera and I'm going to install it. As far as a hint on how to get this all together, the best thing I can tell you to do, which works for me, is I like to stack it on the end of these bolts. I put it all together, then I push the whole thing up against the engine block itself and I tighten it all down. It worked this time. Hopefully it'll work for you when you need to do it. Don't forget you have your governor stuff here. It still has to go back into place. Oh, I've got that jammed in there. Sorry. There we go. That needs to be moving back and forth, and it is. Those have to get attached as well. And like I said, I could have this mounted to my head. I don't think it would have helped as far as filming that to show you what to do because it's just not really visible. All right, once I've got that done, I'm going ahead and I'm going to install my air filter. And I'm going to hook that to the bottom there, snap that back into place. And there we go, that's in there. I've got two more bolts right here and right here. And that is the long bolt goes on the top. And the short bolt goes on the bottom. I think it does lined up. And then I'll tighten those down. Got those done. I'm going to get my needle nose pliers out. And I'm going to hook up this, which is our spring for our governor. It mounts down there. And there we go. Nice. Okay, we're really getting down to it. Only two more pieces to install, plus a spark plug. I'm going to slide this down onto those three studs. Can be a bit tricky sometimes to get them all lined up. This one wants to be difficult. I'll have to play with that when I put the last piece in. Then we'll slide that back on, squeeze our clamps, and get those back into place. Perfect. Okay. Put our starter back up here on top. Yeah, this doesn't seem to want to. Almost seems like it's a bit deformed. There we go. A little bit deformed there, but I got it over it. Install that. Last 3 10s. And if you're wondering why I didn't put the spark plug in yet, it's so I can pull this thing over once or twice and make sure that it's good. Now it's going to be extremely difficult to pull because this is supposed to be held back. With a second person, should be no big deal. This does spin over freely. All right, if you need to gap your spark plug, do so. And then it's time to reinstall that. And put our spark plug wire back on. It kind of snaps. Well, that's it, my friends. You just learned how to tear down and rebuild a Honda GVC 190. Great little engines. You find these on a lot of higher end push mowers and self-propelled mowers. And they have larger versions of this that twin cylinders that run some of the larger Honda equipment out there. Great engine, very durable. Obviously not a lot that can be done if you spin a bearing because there's no replaceable bearings in this thing. But for the most part, these things, as long as you keep oil in them, are A-OK for many years. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm Eric here at Farpoint Mowers and More, trying to teach you all how to do your own work on small engines. If you like the video, if you got some educational value out of it, perhaps think about liking and subscribing, and I'll see you next time. Take care.